Today on the 1012 softball show, myself, Eric, and Lea are looking at the state of the Big 12 before conference play begins next week. Can Baylor, Kansas, and Iowa State turn things around? Is Houston for real? And thoughts on UCF, Arizona State, and BYU. Plus, Arizona State head coach Megan Bartlett joins the show to talk about this year's team. All coming up on the 1012. Hey, if you've listened to the 1012 podcast before, you know about Charlie Hustle. They are sponsors here of the show, of the entire network, and we love them because they care so much about the Big 12 and have some of the absolute best vintage college sports apparel you will find for Big 12 fans. It's why we've partnered with them again and want to make sure that you know the promo code when you go to charliehustle.com to do your shopping to make sure you're outfitted for March Madness, college baseball, college softball, and everything else that's going to come up for your team in 2025. Go to charliehustle.com. Use our promo code 1012network, TEN12, the word network, and get 15% off all non-sale items. Now look, if you're not following them on Instagram, you should go do so. They're giving away tickets to the Big 12 basketball championship. It's really easy to enter. Just go check out Charlie Hustle Co. on Instagram. It's a great thing to do. You want to get some tickets? You want to go see the games in Kansas City? Go enter to win. Plus, look, they've got a sale coming up on their fleece starting next week, starting February 28th. That's actually this weekend. They've got a great sale on fleece. So you're not going to use the promo code for that, but you are going to use it for everything else. 1012 Network, TEN12, the word network, 15% off all non-sale items. You got fleece sale coming up, ticket giveaways on Instagram. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh.
Membership means more with American Express Business Gold. Earn 4 times membership rewards points in your top 2 eligible spending categories every month, including eligible U.S. advertising purchases and select media, and U.S. purchases at restaurants, including takeout and delivery. What are you waiting for? Get the card that flexes with your spending every month. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
So good, so good, so good.
Great brands, great prices. Everyone's got a reason to rack.
Because they have framed jeans.
Nike? Yes.
Just so many good brands.
Vince, Kurt Geiger London, Rag & Bone, and more are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. You never know what you'll find, but you know it's going to be so good. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
Conference. We are the flagship show, the 1012 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin. Thank you for joining us. It is Thursday, and on Thursdays, we talk Big 12 softball. We is not just me. It is 2 people that I love getting to talk to. I look forward to talking to every Wednesday night. He is the voice of UCF softball, one half of In the Circle, the college softball podcast you should be listening to every single episode. And look, he is one of the best voices when it comes to Big 12 softball, and we love to have him. He is Eric Lopez.
Good to be here. It's we just had our 920th episode of In the Circle that came out.
Congrats.
And getting fun. We're about a week away from Big 12 starting, by the way. One week away.
It's very exciting. And obviously we could talk about, congrats to UCF going on the road, knocking off Florida Atlantic, who's the top 25 ranked team. That is a really, really good win for UCF to add to the resume, both for themselves and the Big 12. So very excited for UCF for that one. Also joining us, she is the trash talk queen of the 1012 Network. She is the mother of the Cycloneers. She is the girl that Coach Pink both loves and hates to see coming. She is Lea Nelson.
I like that added ending because very true. But I'm pumped. Love being here. Let's talk some softball.
Let's talk some softball. We got plenty of Big 12 softball to talk about because, look, as Eric mentioned, we this is the final weekend of non-conference slate before conference play starts. Now, everyone's got a week off throughout conference play because of the number of teams and the number of weeks that you have conference play. Utah is actually going to be the team, one of the teams who doesn't start conference play for another week. We're not going to talk a lot about Utah today, other than to say like it's not good. It's not. It'd be good if they could do some damage this weekend, but they've got a tough slate. But we're also going to let Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Texas Tech kind of sit aside for this episode, because we talk about them a lot because they've been doing so well, and those are teams that the Big 12 conference is kind of their hopes are riding on as far as not just postseason but hosting and getting to the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City. So I want to kind of look at the rest of the conference. I will note on Texas Tech, if you missed it on Wednesday, oh man, blowing a 5-0 lead in the bottom seventh by giving up 6 runs, including a walk-off grand slam to North Texas on the road, was a rough way for Wednesday night to go. Speaking of Arizona, top of the 5th at Loyola Marymount. Wildcats currently down 6-4, so we'll see if they can do what they've been doing all season and mount a big comeback against another team that they face. But I want to start with 3 teams that we are all very familiar with in the Big 12. Oh, by the way, we have Arizona State head coach Megan Bartlett. Interview with her coming up. Fantastic interview. She was so much fun to talk to. Young team, exciting team we're going to talk about here in a minute. But stick around for that interview coming up here in a bit. I want to talk about some of the teams that we're all very familiar with here in the Big 12. That'd be Baylor, Kansas, and Iowa State, who are all sticking around. And as we enter into the last weekend of non-conference play, Baylor, Iowa State kind of have a nice, we would view as some fairly easy weekends before Big 12 play starts. Kansas actually going on the road to Norman to play OU twice as well as Marshall. It's going to be, it's not going to hurt the RPI, but I'm not sure it's going to help the record. I want to talk about these 3 teams because they're all in very different positions. Baylor, we had very high expectations for coming into the season. Kansas and Iowa State were kind of, what can these teams do this year? Kansas obviously had a disappointing into last year's season. Iowa State's kind of been down for the last few years. What can they do? And we sit here on Thursday. Baylor, as we mentioned, disappointing. If we use Warren Nolan's RPI until the official RPI comes out, which I believe is next Monday, should be out. Baylor 7-8 on the season, sitting at 83rd in the RPI. Kansas at 7-5, sitting at 100 in the RPI, and Iowa State at 6-7, 121st. You look at these teams and where they sit, both from a Big 12 perspective, but just their teams. What can these teams do as they this weekend and as they prepare to enter Big 12 play to get this season turned around? Is it too late? Are we too deep into it and it's going to be too hard? Or is there something you look at with these 3 teams and say they have time? They have enough opportunity to kind of get things turned around and put this season back in the direction they'd like it be towards potentially making it into the postseason?
Well, that's a great question. And I think I'm going to start with Baylor because to me that's the bigger story with respect to the other 2. I think the other 2 were not. They're kind of where we thought they would be. I'll defer to Lea on Iowa State. And I can talk about Kansas a little bit. I think Kansas, they have pretty good pitching. Their offense is not, they're not a team that's going to win an 8-5 game. They're a 2-1 type of team. And that's probably not a good idea this week. That's not going to work this weekend probably. But
No, probably not.
hopefully they beat Marshall. The problem is when you're a 2-1 type of team, there's no room for error. And that's where you take some losses. But to me, look, the big story is Baylor. I think we all assumed that there was a big 4. And clearly there's not. It's a big 3. Baylor is not in that level. And so, and the thing that's concerning about Baylor is their pitching. Orm has not been good. We talked about her health. I think her ERA is around 6 or 7. I don't have the stats in front of me. I know you do there, but their pitching staff's been good. Lily Walker's not been good either. And it's not like, hey, obviously he's played a tough schedule. Arkansas, he played A&Ms and all that, but they're getting hit against teams that you wouldn't expect them to get hit by. And I think that's the concerning thing about Baylor. You mentioned North Texas. Baylor plays North Texas this week. I mean, I don't consider that a layup at all. North Texas can beat them. So, to me, the pitching, which is what Baylor always plays off, do they find that pitching in Big 12 play? They can't. If they don't, That's a big problem. Even though Taria Coleman's playing well, and Govan's starting to hit, so that's the good news. But somebody's got to step up of either Walker or Orm. Warnick, I believe Warnicki is their best pitcher right now, ERA wise.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's good enough to make the tournament in this current Big 12. I don't like doubting a Glenn Moore team. They seem to always figure it out when they do, so it's a well-coached team. But this might be a personnel issue. Remember, they lost Benford in the after fall. It wasn't like you lose Crandall. Like, at some point, does that take its toll? I do wonder.
I mean, Lea, go ahead.
No, I was just going to talk a little bit. It could take its toll. And the hard thing about softball is it is such a long season. And so, if you stay this course, the way these three teams are playing, it's going to be tough. And it's tough to turn around. But it's also a good thing that softball is such a long season because there is opportunities for them to kind of change their course and turn around. But it has to be this weekend. Like, you've got to have a good weekend going into Big 12s into conference play, because we know how Big 12 conference is. It's a monster. It's a beast. And every game is going to be really difficult. So if you don't figure it out this week, it's going to be tough to really change your mindset and kind of turn it around.
Yeah, for Baylor, I mean, Orm has – it's an 8.14 ERA right now. Like, if you go to Big 12 and look at stats and look at individuals, she's in last place at 36. One spot behind former Baylor pitcher Riley Crandall, who's now at Oklahoma State. Lily Walker, who came over from Duke, and where she had a 1.99 ERA last year and 23 for Duke in 58 innings. She had a 1.2 ERA. Right now, someone they had a lot of expectation to hope for has a 6.72 ERA. Like, the pitching has not been there. And the offense is starting to pick up, as you mentioned. Like, it's getting better. Like, the offense is getting there. And obviously, last weekend, really tough. Them losing Taria Coleman. She got hit in the head in the game opener against Nevada, and then she didn't get to play the rest of the weekend. And so that really hurt them at Mary Nutter. Like, she was never in the lineup again. And I do think that hurt a lot. And hopefully she's back in the lineup this weekend because they need her. But Govan's finally starting to hit the ball. If you've got Coleman in the lineup hitting as well, like, I think the offense will be okay, but they have got to figure out the pitching. I don't know what's wrong with Orme. Like, something has to be wrong. Like, there has to be an injury or something that she's recovering from or is trying to deal with or pitch through, because it's not been she's just, that's just not who she is. And
you wonder if the injuries have taken its toll.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Finally taken its toll, and this is, who knows? We don't know. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to read you their Big 12 start schedule. Baylor opens hosting Kansas. That's a big series for both, because after that, conference-wise, Baylor, it's got Texas Tech coming, goes to Oklahoma State, hosts UCF, and goes to Houston, which the way Houston's swinging the bat,
oh yeah,
the way Baylor's pitching, look out.
Yeah.
They can't afford to dig themselves a hole like they did last year. Last year, they were able to get out of it because they had Binford and Crandall. They carry them, and then people got on base for Govan. I don't think this team can get out of a hole if it digs itself again.
Yeah. I don't feel, I'm not going to pick Iowa State to turn things around. I'm sorry.
No, you don't. Hey, you don't have to apologize.
I don't like it. Like, I don't want to feel this way. I want to have some hope and aspiration, but I just,
Well, let me just say this about Iowa State. It's a much tougher schedule they've played this year than they have in the past. So it's not like they have this, oh my God, that's a bad, a ton of bad luck. They've just, they ran into a buzzsaw in Florida. That obviously exposed them a little bit. But we've seen this before. They play their best when they get to conference.
Right.
Yeah,
when they ruin people's lives.
Anybody at all. It's just, then go hurt everyone else's RPI.
Right.
And that'll get Iowa State's RPI up to about, they'll get enough wins to be a quad 3 team. So they won't be quad 4 anymore, so then the losses won't hurt quite as bad, but you'll still have these losses. I just, when they went to Miami, the FAU tournament with Kansas in that opening weekend. I forget what weekend they went where Kansas was. And basically they played the same teams. And whereas Kansas was dealing with some frustrating close losses where you could just they could just couldn't quite pull it off. Iowa State wasn't. It was drastically and dramatically different.
Right.
And look, I get Florida's a buzzsaw. It was 24-3 was the final score.
I wish you wouldn't have just said that.
I didn't
know
know
it
you
was
could score 24 runs in the softball.
Well, Florida broke their single game scoring record.
Ooh.
I know.
Well, the pitching's young though.
1,000% pitching's young. They're still they're still switching some positions around. We've had many people in center field and right fields. We've had first play second and second play short and and so it's a growing year. There's a lot of freshmen. So
but they've shown they're capable of scoring runs. And
right.
They're probably going to have to win some games like that, 6-4. I don't think this is a shutdown team pitching wise, But they did beat Long Beach State out in that West Coast. It's like the bad lost one is the opener against Stony Brook.
Yeah,
that's the one that you just what happened?
I know.
What do you do? Even FIU do something, but FIU's at home. He's got to take care of business this weekend to get the momentum. But I'm not going to count him out just because, again, we've seen this before where they figure it out in conference. The question is, do they figure it out too late or can they figure it out on time?
Exactly.
When we get to Big 12 play. And you look at the Iowa State schedule, Big 12. At Houston to start. That's a big series for both sides on that one. Then they go to UCF when I'll get to see them there. I think we'll have a pretty good feel for it coming, down the road. They have a tough tournament, by the way, in between.
Yeah.
They're going to Ole Miss to play Ole Miss twice, North Dakota State and Sanford. So he's beefed up the schedule a little bit, trying to avoid those bad losses, if you will. Again, the bad one is Stony Brook. That pitching staff's young. It's very young, and they're going to have to depend on Angelina Allen and that rest of that offense to carry that young pitching.
And again, it stinks when you're a Northern team and weather is such a factor that their first home game isn't until March 28th against Arizona State.
Yeah, it's tough. And they probably have crappy practice times too because you have to work around football and soccer. And I feel for them. I feel for them.
I do. As for Kansas, it very much feels like a team again, like you said. There are a lot of close games. The pitching and the defense is good. Can the offense get going? And until it does, and that's kind of what killed them at the end of last year. Like last year when they were winning games, because they were winning games like 3-2 and 3-1 and 1-0. And it's just too hard to sustain that over an entire season unless and we loved what the pitching staff did last year, but you're not going out there with, Jordy Ball and Nigel Kennedy. Like, they're good pitchers, but you're not going to be able to sustain that for an entire season. You got to get some offense going. So it will be very interesting to see how all three teams kind of enter into Big 12 play after this weekend, see if we can learn a little bit more about them. We kind of touched on Houston. We teased Houston a little bit. Look, I hopped in a softball Twitter space. Shout out to the gang that does those on a regular basis. Stevie helped with our poll. There's a college softball Discord that I'm now in, and it is tons of fun. But I kind of posed the joke of like, all right, can you tell me who's got the fifth best RPI in softball in the Big 12? And I was like, well, it's Houston. Houston is 39th in the RPI based off Warren Nolan right now. It's Houston, the team that we all pegged as the by far worst team in the Big 12. That right now looks like Utah. Now look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Houston's gone through some sort of buzzsaw, and we'll get real RPI numbers on Monday. But based off last year's numbers, I mean, they're 10-4. They don't have anything in what we would consider a quad 1 or 2, but they're not dropping a ton of games against bad teams like they've done in the past. And so it's a fun offense. They put up a ton of runs. They're scoring 10, 11, 12. Like, they score. The pitching's not great. Like, they have to score a lot to be able to win these games. We're going to get into Big 12 play. I think that there's some questions about the pitching in the Big 12 this year, kind of across the board outside of a couple teams. Should we buy Houston? should we buy this is a Houston team that can kind of keep this momentum going and continue to put up runs the way that they are, Eric?
Depends what your definition of buying in. Do you buy that they're better than last year? Yes, because I do like her young talent of freshmen and sophomore position players. They're hungrier. I told you about, Brooke Well. They've got other players, Wilkins. I mean, they got players that can hit the ball fairly good. Their pitching is not great. They're going by committee. That's how it's going to approach. It's going to catch up with them at some point. When does those young freshmen and sophomores hit the wall and you face real competition? How do they respond from that will dictate how the season goes. But that being said, they're not a lock to finish last, like I think a lot of people assume at all. Like, would it shock anybody if they beat Iowa State opening weekend, for example, to win that series? No, it wouldn't, right? So I think the pitching's going to catch up with them. They're not going to compete. I don't think they're a regional team. I think the numbers will drop. The schedule strength will get worse from the non-conference as more games are being played, more than likely. But they are a little better. I like the young talent, but how long can this young talent hold up? At some point, you got to get some pitching. Otherwise, it could be an ugly second half of the year. But they are improved, and they're not, if you don't mind sitting through a 3-hour-plus softball game, they're interesting in that regard.
Eric said it perfectly. They're doing things differently, meaning they are putting tallies in the win column more than some of the teams that we know. But I have to agree, let's wait a couple weeks to see. I think those numbers will drop as they get further into conference play and it starts. But, they start off with Iowa State, and I think that's going to be really interesting. I'm actually kind of glad they're starting out against each other. I'm excited to watch that series. But, again, they're winning games. That's all we can really ask, so.
Yeah. Look, they're in San Antonio this weekend. They're going to have at least one game against Boise State, who's playing well. That's an opportunity for Houston to get a win that we can be a little bit excited about. Maybe start to buy in a little bit more. They have a midweek game next week at home against Florida. Can they look better against Florida than Iowa State did? And then they'll open Big 12 play against Iowa State. And so, right. Look. I think the next 2 weeks can tell us a lot about this Houston team. And as bad as the pitching is, team ERA, it's not the worst in the Big 12. Just leave it at that. I won't tell you whose is worse, but they've got third most RBI, third most runs. And again, it's not like they've played some tough non-conference. We're not gonna pretend, but the offense is scoring runs, and you're gonna have games against teams where that's gonna win you games. Like even good teams or solid teams or better teams than you, that's going to win you games if you can go out there and hit the ball with consistency.
Especially at home. At home, that's a hitter's park. I've been there a million times. They might surprise some people at home. I think where they're going to struggle is on the road a little bit. But again, I do think they're a little better, and they're definitely not like last year. You knew that was going to be a long weekend. But Leah's right. That Iowa State-Houston series, I feel like we're a week ahead. We're going to get into this more next week. But that's a monster series for both of those teams to see what direction they go.
Yep. I love it. Okay.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check the Jumbotron first, before attempting to eat a stack of Supreme nachos in one bite. Now you're just a meme that everyone shares on game day. Checking first is smart, so check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Three of the teams we got to talk about here real quick. BYU, UCF, and Arizona State. Like I said, Coach Bartlett coming up here in just a little bit. Fantastic interview with her. I really enjoyed talking with her. And we continued talking another 15, 20 minutes afterwards. And she's a great person to talk to. So I really enjoyed that. Let's start with Arizona State because I had that conversation because that was my kind of preseason, dark horse darling team that I'm excited about. Look, we're 60th in RPI right now, 10-5 record. It's a very young team, and we've seen the potential is there. And as Coach Bartlett will say, a lot of what they're trying to work on right now is consistency. And you've seen the high. The highs are went over Cal, went over Washington, went over Oregon. Although Washington at this point, I'm not sure how good they are. They got thumped by Florida as well, and they've lost some dumb games like Belmont and North Dakota. And so you've seen the floor, but to me, this is a team who's got a high ceiling because there's a lot of talent on this roster, whose floor is just going to continue to rise. And so my question is, look, this next year, the year after that, like, I think this is a program moving very much in the right direction. And it's going to be really good the next few years. My question is, how quickly do they get good this year? Because this feels like one of those teams where you're going to come into the Big 12 play and just, if they continue to get better and figure out how to do all the basic stuff where that floor is no longer dropping games you shouldn't, and you get to a point where you're still getting wins against teams you're not supposed to. Like, I think that there's still a high ceiling and a lot of potential for Arizona State this year. I am still I know that they're not in the RPI range right now based off what we see. I still think this is a team that I would not be surprised to be in the postseason this year.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, it depends on the pitching. I think the question, what you're getting. First of all, Kenzie Brown's got to stay healthy.
Yeah.
She missed all of last year. She's their ace. They've gotten some quality innings here from Lupe. How do you pronounce that? Meka Lupe?
Yeah, that sounds like what Coach Bartlett said.
Is that what Bartlett said? Very good. I only have 3 weeks to prepare for that. But she's given them some quality innings. They got a nice young freshman that they like a lot. Do they have enough depth pitching-wise? I like their everyday position players. I think they'll score runs. But do they have enough depth pitching-wise? And if they do, I think you're right. But part of the reason they've had some of those losses you've described is because of the lack of pitching depth and experience in particular in the circle. So and in other positions. So I think that's the key to me with Arizona State.
If I'm Arizona State, though, I'm feeling comfortable just based on, the wins that you mentioned, Phillip, Washington, Oregon, Cal. They're treading in the right direction. That gives them some wiggle room to be able to lose to those teams that you don't really want to lose to, like Belmont. And with the way the Big 12 has been playing across the board, they are definitely going to be able to get some wins against potentially, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, UCF, BYU. Like, they're going to be able to steal some games that we didn't think they would steal at the beginning of the season. So they're treading in the right direction, but I'm also excited to see where they are next year and the year after, like you said, because they are a young team, but they are playing some good softball.
The Big 12 did not do them the same favor that it is Arizona, because as we've talked about a lot, Arizona got a very favorable conference schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State, on the other hand, has to go to UCF and go to Iowa State. And we can talk about how good or bad Iowa State is. They still have to go to Florida and Iowa and Texas Tech this year. So it's not the easiest conference draw. I'm really interested in what they do this weekend. They've got 6 games, a lot of games from Thursday through Sunday to play. Oregon State twice, Utah State, UTEP, Yale, and Seattle. It's not like a murderer's row of games, but what do they do in 6 games? You got to play a bunch in a short period where you have a young team that has been very up and down in games. Can they start to show some consistency? Can they get out of this weekend with a 5-1 record where they only drop 1 bad game or even 6-0? Because I think that to me is going to show a lot of the development that they're working on, the promise for this team. Because again, if the floor starts to raise for this team, the ceiling to me is high. Again, it's going to be a whole lot higher next year and the year after that. But I just, how far ahead of schedule can they get this year? Something to keep an eye on. UCF, Eric. Look, speaking of, again, teams who I use air quotes of young because it's a lot of faces we didn't know, because that's what Coach Paul Malone wanted to emphasize to me over and over again. It's not so much young and new, it's just we weren't familiar with the names. But look, like I said, knocking off FAU on the road is big. They scheduled difficult in non-conference, but you got the win over Missouri, you got the win over Clemson. Clemson wins looking better and better. That FAU win's certainly a good one. This UCF team, like, it's similarly like I think the ceiling is high. I think the floor is higher than Arizona State at this point. If they can just, it's just there's those losses that are so frustrating to me for them. I think that's the thing, even more so, of like, the Ohio State, picking up the Ohio State game, having them come to town, and then drop that game, where it's really frustrating because should have beaten them the first time in Clearwater. I'm curious your thoughts on this UCF team right now. You've had your eyes on them more than I think either Lea or I have at this point.
Well, it is young. To me, the strength is their pitching. They're going to go as far as their pitching. Caitlin Felton, who's been a guest on this show, by the way.
She has.
Threw her first career no-hitter last week. Got the save against FAU on Wednesday night. They've got Yesenia Lopez and Isabella Vega. And those three have established themselves, in my opinion anyway, of being maybe the three top arms on that staff. They could literally go, those three will probably pitch the majority of the Big 12 games. And then you probably have Elkins and Cochran as possible matchup pitchers. So Coach Ballmull's done a good job developing those young pitchers. The offense has been the hit and miss. It's a young offense. A lot of new freshmen on the roster. Beth Damon hit a home run in the win against FAU. They need more pop from the youngsters. Damon, Mertez in particular, they played well. Excuse me. So do they figure it out offensively? I think there's some things they got to work on offensively. But they feel they have the personnel. It's just it's young. And Lea, I'll defer to you. You played. When you're young in offense, it's a roller coaster. Some days are good. Some days you look like a team. You look like you have no idea what you're doing. And that's kind of UCF's offense in a nutshell right now. Is timely hitting. They got timely hitting on Wednesday night against a really good FAU pitching staff. Can they get that in Big 12 play will remain to be seen. But I do think they're a young, talented team that is 13-6-1 with a top 15 schedule strength, according to Warren Nolan. So it's not like they're playing soft teams. And kind of like you mentioned about Arizona State, they're hosting a tournament this weekend, which has North Florida, which is pretty good, with a great two-way player, and Allison Benning. They got Georgia Southern, who beat Michigan, Providence, and George Mason. If you can take care of business this weekend and get some momentum into Big 12, I think that would be huge for this team. We'll have every game, by the way, in ESPN Plus. All of them, even the non-UCF games, cross-promote. I think it's a team that the confidence could go up, higher. The only thing I don't like is they have to open at Arizona, at Hillebrand. We'll get into that next week. That's rough. But it's a team that's a year away like Arizona. If you told me who to buy stock between now and then into 2026. Forget how it turns out this year. Just who you buying stock for the Big 12 in 2020 from now and all the way into the end of next 2026. UCF, Arizona State, you buy stock on those teams to go along with the Texas Techs, Oklahoma States, and the Arizonas in my opinion.
I'm putting my money in then. I trust you, Eric, with everything.
Thank you.
I
buy it on you.
Again, the conference is young this year from a roster standpoint. Yeah. Like, I'm not calling it a down year. It's just kind of a rebuild year. Like, the Big 12 should be really good next year because a lot of these names that we talk about at Arizona, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State are all coming back. There's a lot of youth on those rosters as well from a sophomore junior standpoint.
And that's the point. And the exciting thing is the Big 12, even like being young and kind of a rebuild to some extent, it's the number 3 conference right now, early on, according to many of the metrics in the sport. And who knows? Could finish number 2 before it's all said and done. We'll see. But to me, it's a volatile league. And I think one thing we're going to have to maybe learn this year, I don't think we can overreact to one weekend. Because I think we're going to see a lot of volatile results where one weekend a team maybe sweeps one team. We're like, wow, that team, look out, watch that team. And then the next weekend they lay an egg, right? Or perceive lay an egg and lose 2 out of 3 to a team like, I can't believe they lost 2. You know what I mean? I think we're going to have a lot of that conversation throughout this year.
Yep. Certainly something to keep an eye on. All right. So let's look to this weekend. You know, it's a little bit frustrating because normally the Big 12 composite schedule shows me all the networks that everything's going to be on. It doesn't this weekend, so thanks ESPN for updating that. Really appreciate that. That's very helpful. Granted, not every game. There's a lot of games. If you complain about Flow softball, let me say this. I'm not here to defend the quality of Flow softball, okay? I'm not going to do that. It is as all over the map as the Big 12 conference is, okay? But at least we get softball to watch when Flow Softball is broadcasting it. And when you're battling a lot of men's and women's basketball going on this weekend, that it's getting priority, you get games that should probably be televised that will not be. So there's a lot of Saturday games that are not going to be available on ESPN Plus for teams like Baylor or Kansas and Oklahoma because they're not going to be broadcasting those. All the emphasis and focus is going to be on basketball. So, like, I don't even know. I got Oklahoma State at Wichita State for Thursday and Friday. I got games against Wichita State, South Dakota State, Nebraska, and Missouri. I don't know if I'm even going to get to watch a single one of those games. If you want to know how I feel about that, yeah, sure. Oklahoma State versus Missouri and Nebraska. We don't need that broadcast available anywhere. I'd take Flow Softball. I'd take it just mom with a VHS recorder behind home plate, broadcasting that with static, okay? I will put on the Varsity app audio. I don't need audio. It's fine. I can find the local. Just give me a camera somewhere. So if somebody's going to be in Wichita, Kansas and wants to go to those games and broadcast them for me, and just let me know, okay? Let me know.
Well, Nebraska has radio, so you do have audio version if you want to listen in.
I'll get Big 12 audio.
And I think Oak State, don't your Cowgirls have radio?
Yes. Oh no, they do. They've got two guys on the call, and they've been doing a really good job this season. They've been doing a really good job. No, I had them on in my ear while I was in Conway on Monday watching the game. So I'm just tell you. So have one ear that way, and then enjoying watching the Oklahoma State come back from behind to beat Central Arkansas. So, but that doesn't mean that we don't have games to keep an eye on this weekend. We do. There are some good ones, and I'm going to say games to watch. Good luck finding them. Arizona's got a couple against UCLA and San Diego State this weekend. There are definitely a couple to keep an eye on. As I mentioned, Oklahoma State's got Nebraska, Missouri, and Wichita State, but Nebraska, Missouri, both on Friday. That is a heck of a doubleheader where you would imagine both Nebraska and Missouri will throw their best at Oklahoma State that day. So that's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on, especially from a pitching standpoint from Oklahoma State. Texas Tech at A&M this weekend. They've got two games against A&M, one on Saturday and one on Sunday. As I mentioned, Houston's got a game against Boise State in San Antonio. It's a sneaky good one to kind of get an idea for Houston and how far along they actually are coming. Arizona State, Utah State's been pretty good in the Mountain West, folks. Like I said, if they can go 5-1 this
Baylor.
weekend,
They beat Baylor opening weekend.
If they can go 5-1 this weekend, heck, if they go 6-0, like that's. I get it. It's not the names, no SEC, no ACC, no Big Ten. There's still some mid-major teams to keep an eye on who do a really good job, and those are wins that, when it comes time to tournament time and looking at brackets, that are not going to hurt your resume at all. Yeah, Utah State's 62nd, according to Warren Nolan right now. It's only 2 spots behind Arizona State. So Baylor, like we mentioned, has got North Texas, and Kansas is at Oklahoma. They've got a game against OU on Friday and a game on Saturday. I always try and find games for everybody. I'm sorry, Utah. Utah's got a bunch of games that make me very concerned for how Utah's season is going to go, considering that it is currently on a 7-game losing streak. Let's see. They lost every game at Marion Nutter, so that's 5 in a row. 5, 6, 7, 8. It's a 9-game losing streak. It's not good. They're at the Judy Garman Classic, so it's LSU, UCLA, San Diego State, Cal State Fullerton, and Weber State. This losing streak for Utah might last a while.
That's wild. That's just wild. I don't think they've even imagined that.
No, absolutely not. Because it had a nice start to the season, and then it's gone bad.
No, you're right. It's all fair, and you're right. I mean, BYU's got a tune-up. They should be a layup this weekend before they open conference play. Korth is healthy. That's the good news for them. Oddly, BYU struggling a little bit, scuffling offensively a little bit.
Yeah.
That's been the interesting story there. This is not the typical 9-8 BYU team that we're expecting. But the good news is they have Korth, and I still like them as far as possibly making a regional because of that.
Number one team ERA in the Big 12 at 1.71.
That's Korth.
Yep. Yeah, she's got a better ERA than Kennedy does. Now, granted, they've played a much tougher lineup. Okay, I'm not trying to sit here and be like, well, she's obviously better than Najee Kennedy. I'm just saying, like, Kennedy had to pitch against much better teams. But it's more of a credit to, like, Korth has been good for BYU. Like, she's got a .36 ERA. Okay, Not saying she's better than Kennedy. I'm just saying we have to give her some credit.
No, but that is going to be a key factor in this
Yes.
conference, as we'll get into next week, is outside of Kennedy, who gets great pitching? Who is the second best pitcher in the Big 12? Somebody's got to join her in the first team all Big 12 team, right?
Somebody has
who
to.
is that?
I don't know. We'll
Could
find
be
out. It could be Korth. It could be Caden Felton's third right now.
Yeah.
0.79. Then you get Kinsey Brown, Miranda Stoddard, and Mika Laupe. And then, so a couple Kansas pitchers in Washington and Kaylee and Lizzie Ludwig at 7-8, Ruby Malin at 9, and Isabella Vega at 10. So, we'll see. We'll see. All right. You guys are awesome. Lea, you gotta throw some more trash talk, okay? I keep saying that every episode, and then you just come in with like, I'm gonna be nice to everybody.
She's saving it for next month when UCF and Iowa State play.
Duh.
That's what it's gonna be. I cannot wait. Leah's gonna go at Eric.
I know.
You two are being very civil considering what happened on the basketball.
Okay, listen. I'm not going to lie. I was stressing last night, especially because I had to do post-game for Cyclone Fanatic. And Iowa State fans, let me tell you, they are crazy. And I thought I was going to get my head cut off. But it was all right. I mean, it's tough. I'm pretty civil when it's anything but softball. But come softball, you two.
Oh, I know. I'm aware of what happens when Oklahoma State and Iowa State play. And I don't text Leah. I just don't. I don't do it. I'll be texting them. I'll be texting Eric and Leah. They're like, oh, we get da. And all of a sudden it's like,
Oklahoma State. I did not know 6-11 Big 12. That's an improvement. Like there.
I know. Well.
Not good enough, I guess. Okay.
Fine. It's fine. Listen, it's softball season. That is where my focus is. Okay. That's where my focus is. Now I gotta go check the Wichita State schedule again, see if maybe I get one game on ESPN Plus or something. We'll find out. All right. We have a fantastic interview with Coach Bartlett of Arizona State coming up next. So stick around for that. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Eric. Eric will be on the call for UCF this weekend, so you can hear his voice all the time. Of course, you can hear it on In the Circle podcast as well. As Leah mentioned, Cyclone Fanatic, she's doing pre-game, post-game stuff. You can just follow her on Twitter, and it'll pop up. It'll notify you like, Leah's now live.
Leah's live. Come watch her.
Recapping Iowa State's loss to Oklahoma State and men's basketball. You can watch that. It's good stuff. And don't forget, Ten12network.com. Go check it out. We'll have stuff on the Patreon that's softball focused. I've been trying to do as much on there as I can. So y'all enjoy the softball and or the basketball or the baseball or whichever team you or sport your program is currently thriving in this weekend. And we'll talk to you again on Monday.
Hi, I'm Matt Brown, and I run Extra Points, a newsletter that focuses on all of the off-the-field stories that shape college athletics. Right now, we're in a world where what's happening off the field matters more than ever before, between changing laws at the federal and state level, massive lawsuits that might redefine what it means to be a college athlete, the value of media rights deals, private equity, all of these other things matter so much, not just to the Big 12, but to everybody in college athletics. My entire job is to focus on all of that stuff, from expert interviews, open records requests, deeper analysis, to help you make sense of everything else going on so you can be a more informed fan. If you want to understand these things written in a way that's in plain English, not boring, and will help improve your fandom, check out Extra Points at extrapointsmb.com.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pop, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
Our goal here on the 1012 Softball Show is every season to try and get every Big 12 coach on the show at least once. And so I'm very excited that we are now one step closer to that goal this season. very first time here on the show, in part because now part of the Big 12, Coach Megan Bartlett of Arizona State. Welcome to the show.
Phillip, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well. I'm excited. I love doing this. I love getting to know more about the new programs in the conference. I love Big 12 softball. I love talking about this stuff every week. So I'm very excited to have you on. I will toot my own horn a little bit here. When we started doing our preseason stuff, Arizona State was kind of my like dark horse postseason. I'm going to keep a close eye on team, and I would say so far, I know a little bit up and down, but you guys have kind of delivered on my hopes and dreams for your program this year in your first season in the Big 12.
Perfect. Well, hopefully we make good on that for certain. Appreciate the vote of confidence. We got a lot of young ones. They're pretty talented and they're learning really quick. So
let's start there, because obviously this is your third season at Arizona State. Your first few years, I think, marred by a lot of injuries that kind of had the program not deliver on the level of success people, I'm sure, internally and externally have kind of hoped for a softball program with as much history as you guys have. I mean, it's a fairly young roster this year, but for the most part, knock on wood, you've stayed healthy so far. What is your view of this team and kind of where they are at this point in the season?
this is what I can tell you, man. They are young, they are feisty, they are talented, they are super driven, right? They didn't come here to look cute on Instagram and lose softball games. They came here to build something with a strong foundation and compete for national championships and take this thing back to Oklahoma City. And that is something that not just the veterans, but the young kids, they talk about. And they have worked so hard this year, right? Because I feel like any given top 20 program, you're like, oh, here's a freshman or two that maybe broke their way in. There was a hole in the lineup to fill. At any given point, we might have 7 freshmen on the field right now. So to try to, at points, it can feel like herding cats a little bit, but I really honestly mean that. It seems like every day right now, right? Because we played so much in the past 3 weeks. Every day, every weekend, they get a little bit more consistent. They are catching up to the speed of the game. They're a little bit sharper. And I just think the decision-making continues to get better. And honestly, I think this young group is going to be really, really strong leaders, right, by the time they're sophomores, juniors, seniors. So it's all good things at Arizona State softball right now, for sure.
When you have in my mind, when you have a young roster, you want to, there's going to be ups and downs. Obviously some losses that are a little bit regrettable, Belmont, North Dakota, but you want to see what the potential is, right? And so getting the wins over Oregon and getting the win over Washington and seeing them and getting the win over Cal, like seeing them perform against competition where they weren't expected to win, I think kind of shows you where the ceiling is for this team. And that's very exciting with a young roster to say, okay, we know what we are capable of. And if we can find that consistency where we're playing at it, where we raise our floor, knowing how high our ceiling is, like it's got to be very promising for you, both for this year, but as well as kind of looking toward as you continue to build this program to where you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we talk about all the time. Those poor kids have heard the word consistency, I think, 1 million times in the past 3 weeks. But again, you can't really rush time. That's one of the things. Like, yes, you're exactly right. We were going to have some really high highs just based on our talent level. And we've had some low lows already, but they come in the next day, they get back to it, they do their prep, they do their film, and they're ready to complete the next task. So a short memory can be a really valuable asset in this game, and the sun will come up tomorrow. Like, I didn't promise them a perfect season. I promised them a really fun season and the ability to compete for, championships, but perfect is just not a thing that, we as ball players strive for. You have to be married to the process.
I love that. And you kind of answered the question I have. I had Coach Ball Malone of UCF on. She talked about, like, they've talked about, we joked Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down, and a team that can wobble without completely falling down, and seeing your team be able to bounce back and play to those highs and lows as well as you have, I think is really good. And so what what is your messaging to them? And you've kind of said it a little bit, but what is your messaging to this team when they have those lows, when they have those losses that are really frustrating? Of turn this thing around, especially if you're on a Saturday and you start the day with a bad loss, and now you're going to figure out how to turn things around before an afternoon game. What is your message to this team to help them get past those things?
Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to bend, don't break. And you are going to learn more from losses than you're going to learn from winning. And that is just, I think, a reality in a stick and ball sport. So if you allow it to become data collection and you don't make the same mistake twice, right? And you can really thoughtfully, I think, ingest instruction and retain it immediately, you're going to have a really prolific career at this level. And those young ones to this point have been able to do it, right? There's a lot of them on the field in the top of the lineup. My goodness, there's a couple that are learning new positions. And we're kind of building the plane while we're flying it. So, I mean, it's a tight-knit group and there's a lot of trust here. There's also a lot of expectation and standard, and they continue to get better every day and rise to the challenge. And that's all we can ask of them.
That's awesome. I love it. Building the plane while we're flying it. So you got to keep it in the air while you're also trying to put it together. It's great. That's that herding cats. We just need some. Bartlett, we gotta get some nice, just some quote shirts here of building the plane while you're flying it. Herding cats. This is good. This is good stuff. 3 weeks into the season, we got one more season left, one more week before conference play starts. What has surprised you the most about this team so far?
Surprised me the most about this team. I think for as young as we are, I've been really proud of their resiliency. I don't know that I did a great job of that at 18, right? Like I was a very high achieving ball player. I'm a very type A personality. And certainly no matter how many times somebody told me to like, chill out, this is good for this level. Like it's not travel ball. You're not going to hit 800 ever again. I was still running around like little fireball chicken with my head cut off. And I think this is certainly, hopefully, a product of we prepare them and we educate them and we try to teach them all the things they need to know about this level. But I do think by teaching them the nuances of the game and holding a high standard, they've also been really resilient, in a pretty mature way. Again, they're filling big spots in the lineup and playing important roles on defensively. So for the young ones, I think to bounce back and again continue to learn and ingest, as they're having to figure out a way to win ball games, that can be a lot. And they've done a really, really nice job. So I think so far I'm really proud of the resiliency. Like I know that if we misstep, we're going to be able to step back on that field and compete, win the next ball game, which essentially, by the time we get to the Big 12 is going to be incredibly important, right? Wannabe gets to win a ball game, somebody's got to lose a ball game, and the Big 12 is a really tough conference. So I do think just that ability to go to sleep, these are the adjustments I need to make, scrap it, step on the field the next day and make a really tangible adjustment physically and mentally is going to really lend to a great advantage.
Yeah, as someone who did not play sports in college, I'm always curious which is better. When you play football or basketball and you have multiple days after a loss to try and figure things out before you have another shot, or baseball, softball, where it's the next day. Like I get to turn around the next day. I got another shot at this against that same team. Like I'm always curious. It's such a different mindset in both those cases of like, I've got to sit a whole week letting this, trying to make sure this doesn't fester, preparing for the next game versus no, I've got less than 24 hours before I've got to go out there and do this again. It's just such an interesting thought process of trying to balance those two things together. And I'm at this point, I'm just like brain dumping more than I'm asking an actual question to you. We've talked a lot about the youth on this team so far. There's still some seniors and upperclassmen on this roster who are very important to you and very important to your success this year. Who has really stepped up in your mind of the upperclassmen, not just on the actual field, but as leaders of this team and helping prepare this next wave of Sun Devils for helping ensure that Arizona State softball continues to be successful in the future?
Yeah. I mean, Kelsey Hall has certainly been a wonderful leader for us. She's a sixth year. She's been in 3 different programs. She's very mature. She's very articulate. And I think connects with all different personalities really well. And she certainly has this graceful way of raising and holding the standard. So we are certainly blessed that she chose to become a Sun Devil a couple years ago. So definitely Kelsey. I think honestly, AJ Murphy has done a really nice job. AJ is this beautifully chill personality. She's engaging and she's funny, and nothing speeds AJ up, right? Not softball. She doesn't get worked up. She's glue, right? She's connective and she's funny and she's graceful. So it doesn't matter if you're a 6-year or if you're an 18-year-old freshman. AJ is one of those people that everyone just gravitates toward. So, right, to have AJ back and healthy out on the field, she's playing a great shortstop right now, is certainly kind of the cherry on top. But she has been, I think, instrumental, honestly, in just bringing such a diverse team. We have kids that are, Kelsey's 23, down to a lot of 18-year-olds. And there's just a lot of life that happens in those years, right? Kelsey's flying to Minneapolis for a job interview Sunday night. And, the young ones are just certainly not in that headspace yet. So to have older ones that can kind of bring everybody to the middle is really, really important, I think. And then, of course, Kinsey Brown leading the way on the mound with the pitching staff. She certainly took Mika Lupi under her wing a year ago. Both small town, kind of grew up out in the country. And there's certainly a lot of, just values that they share. They're such good girls. They're good people. They're hard workers. So to watch them both have success has just been, as a coach, it just makes your heart happy. Really, really gratifying.
That's awesome. Like you really want to have that leadership to help coach the next wave, and to hear that that's what you've got, and you've got these different personalities that all blend together. I think that's awesome. Also, having to interviews for jobs, it's February. Come on. Like, you got other things? Man, I don't miss those days. I don't.
No. She's very excited about it. So
that's good. That's good. Okay.
All is well, and we'll get her back here Monday night and get back to work, and she'll be happy and she can stop thinking about it. So
excellent. Okay. You guys are part of the Big 12 now. The Pac-12 is an entirely different thing. It's in the rear view. I'm sure, as someone who has a long history with the Pac-12 conference, this is it's not a happy occurrence that the conference is dealing with what it's dealing with. But what are your thoughts on this new Big 12, this 11-team conference that includes some programs that you're very familiar with, obviously in Arizona and Utah, and I'm sure you guys have played BYU quite a bit given the proximity, as well as now sharing a conference with Oklahoma State and UCF and Texas Tech. What are your thoughts on this Big 12 as a whole, both now as a member and just kind of viewing this conference from an outside-in perspective?
Yeah. Well, I came from the Big 12, so certainly with my years at Texas, there's some familiarity there. So we'll call it the Big 12 2.0, right? The more expanded. But yeah, it's an awesome softball conference. It's fun, and now it's expanded its footprint a little more. I don't know, east-west, I suppose. So we're just excited to get going. I think at this point, it's going to be really good competition, for the most part, pretty good weather. But yeah, the fall of the pack was certainly sad. I mean, there's so much history. I know I grew up, watching kind of those prolific School Down South versus UCLA, right? A little Mike Candrea versus Sue Inquist. So it's sad. It's many years of pride and tradition. But what has come next with the Big 12, that conference office is amazing. Like, they are visionary, and they are what's to come, I think, in college athletics. Certainly the move with football has been a great one. We're so excited for Kenny Dillingham and that crew. I mean, God, what an amazing run this fall. So I think just the influx of what it's done for our university, and what it's going to continue to do to raise the profile of our football team is certainly a big deal too, because rising tides raise all ship, right? College athletics has become a resource race, really since the transfer portal and NIL. So we're grateful that the Big 12 wanted us, and we were grateful, to be invited in. And I think we're all just ready to get going. Are
we going to get a Kenny Dillingham first pitch, Cam Scatabo First pitch night there.
That. I think Cam's off training right now. I think the draft and stuff's coming up, but yeah, we'd love to have Katie out for sure. I think some of the female head coaches are going to throw first pitches on Friday for National Women in Sports Day, so he's certainly on the docket.
Nice. Good. Okay. Well, excellent. Excellent. Is it nice to have some programs that Arizona State's more familiar with, if Utah and Arizona joining you? Like, is it nice to have that familiarity as well? And obviously you have the familiarity having been at Texas with some of these programs. Like, does that feel like that gives you a little bit of a heads up as well, being this conference now, having coached against some of these teams already?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, the reality is the world of top 25, and Power 4 is not so big. So a lot of these schools, whether it's preseason tournaments or postseason, you're gonna run up against, certainly. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
We're ready to beat everybody. I don't know that it feels like we're family quite yet. We're just ready to win some ball games.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got 6-game weekend coming up. Oregon State twice, Seattle, Yale, Utah State. Obviously 6-0 is the goal for the weekend, but if there's one thing you'd like your girls to kind of learn or figure out this weekend in this slate before you guys kick off Big 12 play, what would that be?
I think continue to just value the process, right? We're going to see a lot of different pitch profiles and a lot of different arms this weekend. So continuing to sharpen that ability to hunt zones or hunt pitches is very important to us. And then continuing to integrate those freshman pitchers, I think, into the staff in a meaningful way. That's going to also be really important to our success. So we're hopeful we're going to get them going a little bit more this weekend. But yeah, just continue to value consistency, because a lot of times consistency is doing the boring work.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's valuing different things and putting in work behind the scenes to make sure you're ready to go. And that can be a thankless process sometimes, and you're not always going to get a pat on the bottom for it. So we just have to continue to find ways to get an out at a time, take care of the ball, come up with a gap shot in a big moment. And but they all, I think, are very aware of the expectations and what it's going to take to perform in that way from here on out. So at this point, I feel like we've done a lot of learning, and now it's at least from where I'm sitting, right in the third base box and in the dugout with our team, things are starting to look a little like the game's slowing down for them, if that makes sense, right? Where our decision making kind of cleans up every single weekend. The pitchers seem to settle in a little bit more on the mound. So those things are exciting.
To quote Bluey, sometimes the boring stuff is important too. So
sometimes it's the most important stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I have some random questions I like to ask the players. And so I'm going to ask you some of them now, because I haven't done it with a coach yet. I think this will be a little bit fun. Okay. Number one is peanut butter and jelly. What is your jelly of choice?
Ooh, if I have to eat jelly, it's strawberry, but I would prefer honey.
Okay. Peanut butter and honey. That is that is a
answer.
Yes. No, that is a standard in our house.
Okay.
My girls eat that a lot. We also are big. Have you had Fluffernutter yet? Peanut butter and marshmallow fluff.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's yeah, do that, and if you throw some sliced bananas in there, it's yeah, it's good. Just a heads up. Okay, who is the best trash talker on your team?
Ooh, Tiare Ho-Ching. So sassy. I love her so much. She is a tiny little fireball. She's our second baseman, leadoff hitter right now. She's absolutely crushing it. But yeah, her and Ashley Mejia. That's the dynamic duo right there.
That's good. That's good. Okay. Oh, what did I have? Oh yeah, sorry. No, this is good audio. Oh, this is good interview stuff when I actually forget the questions to ask. So good job, me. Where to go? I'm sorry. Okay. What would your walk-up song be?
Ooh, what would my walk-up song be? Probably something country. It's kind of a banger.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to be any help there. I don't listen to like country music, but
I like country music. Yeah.
That's good. No, that's great. I get into a little bit more all the time. My wife is happy about that. So obviously players have game day rituals. Do you have a game day ritual as a coach?
Lots of coffee. Lots of coffee. I have the best yachts on the planet. Lexi full on just feeds the addiction. She knows the order. She doesn't even ask. It just appears multiple times a day. Lexi is the best.
Yeah. Is that a game day ritual or is that a every single day of the week ritual?
Well, she doesn't buy it every single day of the week, but she'll just, do the big staff run a couple times a day on game day. And it's certainly super appreciated.
Excellent. Okay. Which Big 12 series? And I'm going to ask, and I know I'm going to get a coach answer, and that's okay. I have to ask anyways. Which Big 12 series are you most looking forward to? You guys have BYU, UCF, Arizona, Iowa State, Kansas, Utah, Baylor, and Texas Tech.
Okay, so I've got a rogue answer for you. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm most excited for actually is the Big 12 tournament because it's at the Hall of Fame Stadium in OKC. I am so excited, right, for these young ones to put spikes on that ground for the first time. It is this incredible, it's like that sense of, oh my God, I'm here, right? You've got thousands of people in the stands and just to be immersed, like the smell of the grass and the smell of the dirt and, all the kind of pomp and circumstance going on around you. It's a great event and in such a special place for our sport. So I'm so excited for those young ones to just, again, put their spikes to the dirt, kind of get familiar with it, get to know the dimensions, speed of play out there. So that by the time we get back and play, in the World Series, they're not overwhelmed by it. They've already played a whole tournament there and hopefully had some great success already. So I think I'm really excited for that week. I love postseason, love to compete.
That's an awesome answer. That's great. No, I appreciate it versus, well, we're just happy to play everybody and we can't wait to get out. No, that's a great answer. I love that. That's fantastic. All right, Coach, you have been phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time and for hopping on here and talking about Arizona State softball with us. I cannot wait to get you back on again. Again, I root for the whole Big 12 and obviously I am an Oklahoma State fan, but I am an ASU fan. Like I've put myself out there saying, I think you guys are going to be a postseason team this year, and I see the potential based off the ceiling of the team. So I'm very excited to continue to follow you. Obviously, every Big 12 team, but I'm really excited to follow you guys this year. I'm happy to have you in the Big 12, and I need a Sun Devil hat for right here.
Okay, we'll have Josh line it up. Yes,
perfect. I love. Yeah, we'll put it. We'll
so much. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Here, yeah, we're excited for the move to the Big 12 for sure.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
O'Reilly! Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.